The red dust rose in low clouds as the afternoon sun hammered down on the Kenyan savanna. Sarah Mitchell, veterinarian for the Wildlife Rescue Foundation, wiped sweat from her forehead as she drove the old Land Rover through the rugged trails of Tsavo National Reserve. The heat was oppressive, the kind that made every breath feel like inhaling fire, and the landscape shimmered with mirages that danced along the horizon. Beside her, James Kimani, an experienced tracker with over 20 years in the field, carefully scanned the horizon through worn binoculars. His weathered face, marked by decades under the African sun, was creased with concentration. James had seen everything the savanna had to offer: births, deaths, the brutal circle of life that played out daily in this ancient landscape. But even he couldn't have predicted what they were about to encounter. There, to the left, James pointed toward an area of denser vegetation near a dried riverbed. "I see vultures circling, at least a dozen of them. Could be serious trouble." Sarah turned the vehicle in the indicated direction, her heart already tightening with apprehension. Vultures almost always meant death or suffering in the savanna. As a field veterinarian, she had witnessed countless tragedies over the years: victims of poachers, animals caught in brutal wire traps, creatures injured in territorial disputes, babies separated from their mothers. Each case left its mark on her soul, but she had learned to compartmentalize, to focus on what she could save rather than what she had lost. Today, however, would test that resolve in ways she never imagined. The Land Rover bounced violently over the uneven terrain, kicking up clouds of dust that coated everything in a fine red powder. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as they navigated around termite mounds and acacia trees. The vultures were getting closer now, their dark silhouettes stark against the brilliant blue sky. As they drew closer, it was the sound that hit them first, a piercing, desperate cry that cut through the hot afternoon air like a knife. It wasn't the roar of a predator or the bellow of an injured elephant. It was something sharper, more urgent, more heartbreaking, the call of a young animal in absolute panic. "It's a foal," Sarah murmured, accelerating the vehicle despite the rough terrain. "Crying for help. I've never heard one sound so distressed." "Drive faster," James urged, his usual calm demeanor cracking. "That sound. Something is very wrong." They burst through a curtain of thorny acacias, branches scraping against the sides of the vehicle with harsh scratching sounds, and the scene revealed itself before them. What they saw made Sarah slam on the brakes so hard that both of them were thrown forward against their seatbelts. An adult zebra lay on her side on the ground, clearly in severe distress. But it wasn't just her position that was alarming. Her distinctive black and white stripes were stretched grotesquely over what appeared to be a massive, irregular swelling on her abdomen. Even from a distance of 30 feet, Sarah could see the tumor was enormous, roughly the size of a basketball, distorting the zebra's entire body shape and making her look like some nightmarish distortion of the graceful creature she should have been. The zebra's breathing was labored and shallow, her rib cage heaving with each painful breath. Her eyes were half closed, glazed with agony that no animal should have to endure. Flies buzzed around her in clouds, attracted by the scent of sickness and approaching death. But what immediately captured Sarah's attention, what made her heart break into 1,000 pieces, was the foal. He couldn't be more than 3 months old, still bearing the slightly fuzzy coat and oversized ears of extreme youth. He was running in frantic circles around the fallen mother, his small hooves churning up the dust, his cries becoming more desperate with each passing moment. "My God!" Sarah breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "That tumor! James, have you ever seen anything like that?" James shook his head slowly, his weathered face grim with concern. "In all my years, and I've been tracking animals since I was 15 years old, never on a wild zebra. That animal should have died weeks ago, maybe even months ago. The fact that she's still breathing is a miracle. Or a curse, Sarah added quietly. Look at her. She's in agony. The small zebra stopped abruptly when it heard the vehicle's engine cutting through his panic. His large, dark eyes, still holding the innocent clarity of youth, fixed on Sarah and James with an intensity that was almost human in its desperation. For a moment, the entire savannah seemed to hold its breath, and then something happened that would make Sarah question everything she thought she knew about animal behavior, about the barriers between species, about the very nature of consciousness and communication. The foal didn't run. Every textbook Sarah had ever read, every lecture she had attended at veterinary school, every paper on zebra behavior she had studied, all of it said that this young animal should have bolted at the first sign of human presence. Zebras were prey animals, hardwired by millions of years of evolution to associate humans with danger, with death, with everything that threatened their survival. Instead, the foal took a few hesitant steps toward the vehicle, his small body trembling with a mixture of fear and something else, something that looked almost like hope. He stopped halfway between the humans and his mother, positioning himself so that he could see both. Then he looked back at the fallen zebra, and back at Sarah. The small animal repeated this movement 3 times, clearly deliberate, clearly purposeful. "Sarah," James whispered, his voice laden with astonishment that bordered on disbelief. "He's asking us for help. That foal is actively showing us she needs us. In 23 years of tracking, I've never seen anything remotely like this." It was impossible, Sarah thought, her scientific training warring with what her eyes were showing her. Zebras were prey animals, programmed by millions of years of evolution to flee from anything that moved on 2 legs. The flight instinct should have sent that foal running to the horizon the moment it spotted humans. Every survival mechanism in his young body should have been screaming at him to run, to save himself, to abandon the fallen mother, because that's what nature demanded. And yet there he was, doing something that defied all biological logic, choosing trust over instinct, choosing hope over fear, choosing to believe that these strange 2-legged creatures might be able to do what he could not: save his mother. Sarah descended from the vehicle slowly, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. She had learned long ago that sudden movements could trigger a panic response in wild animals, even those as desperate as this foal appeared to be. Every step was calculated, every gesture designed to communicate safety and peaceful intentions. The foal stepped back a few paces, but didn't flee. He whinnied softly, a broken, plaintive sound that was half cry and half plea, and again looked at his mother with eyes that seemed to hold an ocean of emotions. "It's okay, baby," Sarah said softly, her voice gentle despite the turmoil raging inside her. "We're here to help. I promise you, we're here to help." Approaching the adult zebra carefully, Sarah could see the full extent of the situation, and it was far worse than she had initially thought. The tumor on the zebra's abdomen was even more massive up close, a grotesque mass that had to be causing immense pain and pressure on the animal's internal organs. It was roughly spherical, but with irregular bulges and protrusions, giving it a nightmarish appearance that looked more like something from a horror movie than a medical condition. The skin over the tumor was stretched so tight it was almost translucent in places, revealing a network of distended veins running across the surface like dark rivers on a map. Worst of all, Sarah could see signs of recent rupture, several small areas where the tumor had begun to break through the skin, oozing a mixture of blood, pus, and clear fluid that had attracted swarms of flies. The smell hit her then, the sickly sweet odor of infection mixed with the metallic tang of blood. Sarah had to fight back the urge to gag, forcing herself to maintain her professional composure. This zebra was dying, probably had been dying slowly and agonizingly for weeks or even months. The fact that she had survived this long was a testament to the incredible will to live that drove all mothers to protect their young. "How is she even still alive?" Sarah asked, already reaching for her medical bag with trembling hands. This level of tumor growth, the obvious infection, the fluid loss. By all rights, she should have succumbed days ago. "The will to survive for her baby," James responded, approaching cautiously while keeping a respectful distance. "Look at the foal. It's still nursing age. You can see milk stains around his mouth. She's been fighting to stay alive for him, to keep feeding him, to keep protecting him from predators. That's why she hasn't given up. That's why she's still breathing despite the impossible odds." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat, hot tears pricking at her eyes. This zebra mother, carrying what was almost certainly a fatal tumor, had somehow found the strength to keep going, to keep protecting her foal, to keep nursing him even as her own body was being consumed from within. The love between mother and child transcended species, transcended language, transcended everything that supposedly separated humans from animals. And now, in her moment of greatest desperation, that foal had made the extraordinary decision to trust the only beings who might help, humans that its very nature told it to fear. "This is going to be incredibly complicated," Sarah said, her mind racing through possibilities and outcomes, most of them grim. "That tumor, it's likely cancerous, probably been growing for months. Given the size and the rate of growth, I'd guess it started as a small nodule maybe 6 or 8 months ago and just kept expanding. I need to examine it more closely. But James, I have to be completely honest with you. I've never performed surgery like this in the field. No one has." "What are the options?" James asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Sarah knelt beside the zebra, carefully palpating around the tumor with gloved hands. The mother's eyes were glazed with pain, her breathing shallow and labored. Each breath seemed to require tremendous effort, as if the simple act of living had become a monumental task. Her body temperature was elevated. Sarah could feel the fever radiating from her skin, even through her gloves. "If we do nothing, she'll die, probably within 48 to 72 hours at most," Sarah said bluntly, knowing that sugarcoating the situation helped no one. "The tumor is putting pressure on everything. Her stomach, her intestines, probably her diaphragm, which is why her breathing is so compromised. If it ruptures completely, she'll either bleed out or die from septic shock within hours. Neither death would be peaceful or quick." "And if we operate?" James pressed, though he could probably see the doubt written across Sarah's face. "It's incredibly risky, maybe a 10 or 15% chance of success, and that's being optimistic," Sarah admitted. "I'd need to sedate her heavily, which is dangerous given her weakened state. Then I'd have to remove the tumor, which means cutting away what looks like 40 to 50 pounds of diseased tissue. That's major surgery even in a sterile hospital environment with a full surgical team. Out here, with limited supplies, no proper surgical suite, no blood transfusion capabilities if something goes wrong." Sarah trailed off, the weight of the decision crushing down on her like a physical force. She had taken an oath to help animals, to relieve suffering where she could. But she also had a responsibility not to prolong agony unnecessarily. Attempting surgery might just mean this zebra mother would die on the operating table instead of peacefully drifting away over the next few days. Was that really more merciful? The foal approached them then, moving with heartbreaking trust. He walked right up to Sarah and gently nudged her arm with his soft muzzle, his breath warm against her skin. Then he looked at his mother, then back at Sarah. The message was unmistakable, transcending the barriers of language and species. Please save her. Please don't let her die. That decided it. "Call it in," Sarah said suddenly, her voice firm with decision despite the fear churning in her gut. "Get Dr. Omandi on the radio. Tell him we need the mobile surgical unit here immediately. And I mean immediately, not in 2 hours or tomorrow. Tell him it's a mass removal on an adult zebra, critical condition, and we need every piece of equipment he can bring. Surgical lights, extra anesthetic, antibiotics, sutures, the whole arsenal. While James rushed back to the vehicle to make the urgent radio call, Sarah prepared her immediate supplies. She grabbed her phone with hands that shook slightly, documenting the case by snapping photos of the tumor from multiple angles. These images would be crucial for consultation, for medical records, and frankly, for proof that what they were about to attempt wasn't complete insanity. She also took photos of the foal standing vigil over his mother, capturing the raw emotion in his eyes, the way he never strayed more than a few feet from her side. This was a story that needed to be told, a moment that needed to be remembered. "Dr. Omandi is coming," James announced, running back from the vehicle. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. He's dropping everything and coming directly. He's bringing Dr. Mwangi too, the surgical specialist, and Sarah. He said to tell you that you're either crazy or the bravest veterinarian he's ever worked with." Sarah laughed despite herself, a short bark of nervous laughter. "Probably more crazy than brave. But I can't look at that baby and do nothing. Even if we fail, at least we tried." She began preparing to sedate the zebra, measuring out careful doses of tranquilizers and sedatives. Too little, and the zebra wouldn't stay under during surgery. Too much, and her compromised system might not be able to handle it, sending her into cardiac arrest. "We're going to try, Mama," Sarah whispered to the animal, stroking her neck gently. "You fought this hard to stay with your baby. We're going to fight just as hard for you. I promise you that." But when she approached with the loaded syringe, the foal suddenly became agitated. He positioned himself between Sarah and his mother, not aggressively, but protectively. His ears were pinned back, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. He made a sharp warning sound, backing up against his mother's prone body. "He thinks you're going to hurt her," James observed, understanding dawning on his face. "He doesn't understand that the needle is to help." Sarah felt her heart break a little more. Of course the foal was afraid. All he knew was that his mother was suffering, and now a strange human was approaching with something sharp. How could he possibly understand that sometimes helping meant causing brief pain first? She knelt down to the foal's eye level, speaking in a soft, steady voice that she hoped conveyed all the reassurance and compassion she felt. "I know you're scared, baby. I know you don't understand what's happening. But your mama needs help. She needs help desperately, right now, and we're going to give it to her. This needle will make her sleep so she doesn't feel pain when we work. I promise you, I promise with everything I am, that I'm not trying to hurt her. We're trying to save her life." The foal stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah could have sworn she saw understanding flicker in those dark eyes. Then, inexplicably, slowly, he stepped aside. He moved to his mother's head, nuzzled her gently, and then walked a few paces away, giving Sarah room to work. It was as if he had made a conscious decision to trust. Despite every instinct screaming at him to protect his mother from these strangers, he chose to believe. Sarah administered the sedative carefully, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The zebra's eyes began to flutter, her breathing changing rhythm as the medication took effect. The foal let out a distressed cry when he saw his mother's eyes closing, and he tried desperately to nuzzle her awake, pushing at her face with his small muzzle. "She's just sleeping," Sarah said gently, reaching out to touch the foal's shoulder. To her amazement, he didn't flinch away. "She'll wake up. I promise you, if there's any way possible, she'll wake up and you'll be together again." It was a promise she had no right to make, but looking into that foal's eyes, she couldn't help herself. 20 agonizing minutes later, minutes spent checking and rechecking the zebra's vital signs, preparing the surgical area as much as possible, and offering quiet reassurances to the watching foal, the mobile surgical unit arrived in a cloud of dust and squealing brakes. Dr. Paul Omandi, a Kenyan veterinary surgeon with expertise in wildlife oncology and a reputation as one of the best in East Africa, jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped. He was a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and steady hands that had saved countless animals over his career. Behind him, Dr. Grace Mwangi, a specialist in large animal surgery, emerged carrying cases of equipment. "Show me," Dr. Omondi commanded, all business despite having driven at dangerous speeds to get here. When he saw the tumor, even his experienced composure cracked. His eyes widened, and he let out a low whistle of disbelief. "Mother of God, Sarah, this is one of the largest cutaneous tumors I've ever seen on a wild animal, and I've been doing this for 30 years. How is she not already septic? How is her heart still beating?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But we need to work fast. That foal has been keeping watch over her, probably for days based on his condition and the timeline of the tumor rupture. If we can save her—" "It's going to take hours," Dr. Omondi said, already scrubbing his hands with sanitizer from the mobile unit. 3, maybe 4 hours of surgery, and there's absolutely no guarantee. In fact, the odds are strongly against us. But let's try. God help us. Let's try. Dr. Mwangi was already setting up equipment, moving with practiced efficiency. "I've got portable lights, extra anesthetic, 10 liters of IV fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics, and enough suture material to close the Grand Canyon. Let's see if it's enough." What followed was one of the most intense surgeries Sarah had ever participated in, and certainly the most dramatic field surgery of her entire career. Under the blazing African sun, with temperatures hovering around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the team erected a makeshift surgical tent around the zebra using tarps and poles from the mobile unit. Portable solar-powered lights were positioned to illuminate the surgical field. The foal remained nearby the entire time, watching silently from about 15 feet away. James stayed with him, speaking quietly in Swahili, as if his gentle words might somehow comfort the frightened young animal. Occasionally, the foal would make a soft sound of distress, but he never tried to interrupt the surgery. It was as if he understood, on some level, that this was his mother's only chance. Dr. Omondi made the first incision with steady hands, cutting through the stretched skin that covered the tumor. Blood immediately welled up, and Dr. Mwangi was ready with suction and clamps. The tumor was even more deeply rooted than they had feared. Tendrils of cancerous tissue had extended into the muscle layers of the abdominal wall, intertwining with healthy tissue in a nightmarish web. "This is going to be meticulous work," Dr. Omondi muttered, his face a mask of concentration. "We need to remove all the diseased tissue, but preserve as much healthy muscle as possible, or she'll never be able to stand again." Sarah assisted, providing retraction and suction, handing instruments, monitoring the zebra's vital signs on a portable monitor. The mother's heart rate was elevated but steady. Blood pressure was lower than ideal but stable. Oxygen saturation was adequate. 1 hour passed, then 2. The sun beat down mercilessly despite the tarp, and sweat dripped from everyone's faces. They paused only briefly to drink water and wipe their brows before continuing. "It's coming free," Dr. Omondi finally said after 2.5 hours of delicate, painstaking work. His voice carried a note of cautious optimism. "Sarah, suction here. I need to see what we're dealing with underneath. Grace, get ready with hemostats. There are some significant blood vessels involved here." Finally, after 3.5 hours of surgery that felt like an eternity, the tumor was out. Dr. Omondi and Dr. Mwangi lifted it carefully and placed it in a large surgical basin. It lay there, grotesque and massive, easily weighing 40 to 45 pounds of diseased tissue. It was roughly the size of a basketball, but irregular in shape, covered in a thin membrane that revealed the dark, necrotic tissue within. "I'll send samples to the lab in Nairobi," Dr. Mwangi said, carefully taking tissue samples for pathology. "My guess is This started as a lipoma that underwent malignant transformation, rare but not unheard of. The wound left behind was enormous, a cavity in the zebra's abdomen roughly the size of a dinner plate. The surgical team worked quickly to ensure no internal damage had occurred, checking organs, ensuring no perforations or ruptures in the intestines, stomach, or other vital structures. "Everything looks intact internally," Dr. Omandi announced with evident relief. Remarkably, the tumor grew outward rather than inward. That probably saved her life, or at least prolonged it long enough for us to get here. Closing the wound took another hour. Layer by layer, they rebuilt what the tumor had destroyed. Internal sutures to close the muscle layer. External sutures to close the skin. Over 100 individual stitches, each placed with careful precision. They installed a drain to prevent fluid buildup. They wrapped the entire area in sterile bandages secured with veterinary wrap. "I've given her IV antibiotics, pain medication, anti-inflammatories, everything I can think of," Dr. Omandi said, stripping off his blood-soaked gloves. His hands were cramping from the hours of delicate work, and his back ached from bending over the patient. "Now it's up to her. If infection doesn't set in, if she can stand, if her body can handle the trauma of such major surgery, she might make it." Might? I'd say we've given her a 20 to 30% chance, which is infinitely better than the 0% she had before. They moved back, giving space. The team had done everything humanly possible. The sun was setting now, painting the savanna in shades of gold and orange. They had been working for over 4 hours, and everyone was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. Now they could only wait. The zebra began to stir as the sedative wore off, the anesthesia slowly releasing its hold. Her legs twitched first, small involuntary movements that suggested her nervous system was coming back online. Then her eyes began to flutter, consciousness returning like a slow tide. The foal, who had been lying down in exhaustion, immediately jumped to his feet. He nickered urgently, a sound filled with hope and desperate love. With tremendous effort, the mother zebra tried to rise. Her front legs scrabbled against the dirt, seeking purchase. But she fell back, too weak from blood loss and trauma. The foal stepped forward, nickering encouragement. He positioned himself near her head, as if trying to will her strength into her body. The mother tried again. This time she managed to bring her front legs beneath herself, pushing up with visible strain. Her back legs followed, trembling with effort. For a long, heart-stopping moment, she swayed dangerously, and Sarah was certain she would fall. "Come on, Mama," Sarah whispered, clenching her fists. "You can do this. You've come so far. Don't give up now." And then, miraculously, the zebra found her balance. She was standing, trembling, but alive. Her legs shook like leaves in a storm, but they held her weight. The surgical wound was visible under the bandages, but clean, professionally sutured, and treated with everything modern veterinary medicine had to offer. The foal let out a cry of pure joy, there was no other word for the sound, and rushed to his mother's side. He pressed his muzzle against hers, and the sound they both made, a low, harmonious whinny that resonated with emotion, brought tears streaming down Sarah's face. James was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. Dr. Omandi wiped his eyes. Dr. Mwangi turned away, her shoulders shaking. "Will she make it?" James finally asked through his tears, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah watched the zebra take a few experimental steps. She was weak, clearly in pain despite the medication, but moving with determination. With luck and time and careful monitoring, yes. If infection doesn't set in, and we've done everything possible to prevent it, if she can eat and regain her strength, if the wound heals properly, she has a real chance now, a real fighting chance. Mother and foal began to move away slowly, the adult zebra moving carefully but deliberately, one step at a time. The foal stayed close, matching his pace to hers, offering support with his small body pressed against her side. But after a few meters, both stopped. They turned in unison and looked back at Sarah, James, Dr. Omondi, and Dr. Mwangi. What happened next made time seem to stop, made the entire world narrow down to this one perfect moment. The foal took 3 steps back toward the humans. Then he stopped, lowered his head slightly, almost like a bow of respect, and waited. His mother, despite obvious pain and weakness, despite having every reason to simply walk away and never look back, did the same. For 5 long seconds, both animals remained this way, in perfect stillness, mother and child unified in purpose. Then the adult zebra did something that left the entire rescue team absolutely speechless, something that would haunt Sarah's dreams and give her hope for the rest of her life. She took 2 careful steps back toward them, each movement clearly costing her tremendous effort. Her dark eyes, clear now despite the pain, still showing the exhaustion of her ordeal, fixed on Sarah's face. And then, deliberately, with unmistakable intention, she extended her neck and gently touched her muzzle to Sarah's outstretched hand, the briefest contact, soft as a whisper, a connection between species that transcended evolution, instinct, and fear. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds, 3 seconds that contained entire lifetimes of meaning. Then mother and foal turned together and began walking toward the distant tree line, moving slowly but steadily into the golden light of the setting sun, silhouetted against the ancient African sky. Sarah stood completely frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to process what she had just witnessed. Her hand still tingled where the zebra had touched her, as if that brief contact had left an invisible mark. Beside her, James had removed his hat and held it against his chest, his expression one of profound awe and reverence. Dr. Omondi, a man who prided himself on scientific objectivity and rational thinking, simply stared with tears streaming down his weathered face. Dr. Mwangi had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with wonder. "In all my years in the savannah," James finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion, struggling to find words adequate to the moment. "In 23 years of tracking animals through this bush, I have never seen anything like that, never even heard stories like that from the old trackers. They understood. They thanked us. That wasn't instinct or coincidence. That was conscious gratitude." "That foal knew," Sarah said softly, watching the 2 zebras disappear into the distance, becoming smaller silhouettes against the enormous sky. "Somehow, that baby knew we were the only chance its mother had. It overcame every instinct evolution gave it, every fear programmed into its DNA, and it asked us for help. It chose to believe in the impossible, that humans, the species its kind has learned to fear, might save instead of harm. And she trusted us with her life, submitted to surgery that by all rights should have terrified her, and lived through it." Dr. Omondi wiped his eyes, not ashamed of his tears. "I'll need to check on her in 3 days, then a week, then 2 weeks. Track her recovery closely. That wound, it's going to need careful monitoring. Any sign of infection, necrosis, separation of the sutures, and we'll need to intervene immediately." "I know where they'll be," James said with quiet certainty, his tracker's instincts already working. "That mother won't travel far while she's healing, can't travel far in her condition. She'll find a safe place near water where the grass is good, somewhere with visibility so she can watch for predators, and she'll rest there. I'll find them. I always do." As darkness fell over the savannah, as the stars began to emerge in their billions overhead, Sarah packed up the medical equipment with hands that still trembled from exhaustion and awe. In her entire career, through veterinary school, through her internship at the San Diego Zoo, through 5 years working in field conservation in Africa, she had saved countless animals. Elephants caught in snares, lions poisoned by angry villagers, rhinos mutilated by poachers. Each rescue had been meaningful. Each life saved a victory against the darkness. But this was different in a way she couldn't fully articulate. This was a small zebra foal that had looked into the eyes of humans and chosen to believe they would help rather than harm. This was a mother who had fought against death itself, who had carried an impossible burden for months, all to protect her baby for a few more days, a few more weeks. This was a moment of connection across species that transcended everything Sarah thought she understood about the natural world, about consciousness, about the walls we build between human and animal. 3 days later, James found them exactly where he predicted, near a seasonal watering hole in a valley sheltered by rocky outcroppings and acacia trees. The mother zebra's surgical wound was healing remarkably well, no signs of infection, the sutures holding perfectly. The bandages had come loose and fallen away, as expected, but the wound beneath was clean and closing normally. She was grazing slowly, methodically, rebuilding her strength one mouthful at a time. The foal was nursing regularly, healthy and alert, and growing by the day. When the Land Rover approached, moving slowly and carefully so as not to startle them, the foal looked up from where he had been grazing near his mother. This time there was no fear in his eyes, just recognition, calm and clear. And in that moment, Sarah understood something profound, something that would change how she saw her work and her place in the world. Intelligence, emotion, consciousness, and the capacity for trust and gratitude weren't exclusively human traits, weren't gifts that separated us from the rest of creation. They existed in creatures wild and free, in mothers who fought death for their children, and in children brave enough to ask ancient enemies for help when all hope seemed lost. The zebra mother raised her head from her grazing, met Sarah's eyes one more time across the distance of 30 feet, held that gaze for a long moment that communicated more than words ever could, then returned peacefully to eating. It was acknowledgement enough. It was everything. Some bonds, Sarah realized as they drove away, transcend all boundaries that we construct. And some moments of connection change everything you thought you knew about the world, about consciousness, about the invisible threads that connect all living things in ways we're only beginning to understand. The foal, the mother, the tumor, the impossible surgery, the moment of trust. All of it would stay with Sarah forever, a reminder that miracles still happen in this world if we're brave enough to try for them.